Happy Sunday, everybody. Today we're looking at a Kato SD45. So we're going to jump right into this. I have been on a bit of a hunt for some SD45s, and not really as common out there. The SD40 and SD40-2 get all the love, but occasionally it's pretty cool to see an SD45 on the layout. And I've had this one for quite some time now, and this is actually an engine that I did a Dcc conversion on, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to go over this model. Is some of the gripes that I have with the current eBay market. Something to be said, I think the good Kato name comes from the comparison between this and other Atlas engines in this particular time frame when this was built, like the 2006 era. And that's me just guessing, I'm not totally sure, but comparatively, if you were to put something like this Atlas up against it, the quality and, smoothness of this engine compared to that one is miles ahead. But compared to modern Kato engines, these just do not run as good as these modern Katos. And this one isn't even a relatively new release. It's 5 or 6 years old. And if you ran these two side by side, you would notice a drastic difference in 1, motor noise, 2, pulling power, and 3, slow speed control. I don't know what the actual difference between the motors is, and maybe it's the type of decoder that I had to install on this, but it simply does not hold up to the standard that the more modern Katos go by. So something to be noted if you're looking for these, they're not quite up to the par that all of the other Katos would necessarily fall into. If you are in the used market and you're just kind of searching for a Kato SD40, SD45s, and you don't necessarily know the difference, generally a good indicator, unless you can see the frame in the photos of the used marketplace, whether that's eBay or some other resellers, the truck design is generally a dead giveaway that you're looking at a DC only engine. And if you're just looking at this, it doesn't seem a whole lot different, but when you get a more modern SD40 up next to it, and the older SD40s have the same truck design as this, to the best of my knowledge. I've looked at several, and I believe they are the same, but the boxier, clunkier looking truck on the right there is generally a good giveaway that it is a DC only model, compared to the more modern ones where you have brake canisters and a little more fine detailing. Now, in general, I am strictly a DCC guy. I've kind of fell in love with the ability to hook up my engines and big long consists and have them all properly speed matched, and it can be done on DC, and there are people that are much better at that than I am. They have, there are ways to speed match DC engines, but because I like to run big consists and long trains on my layout, DCC is really the only option. Now, if you're simply a DC guy, this really isn't a big deal for you. You can put one of these on your layout and it's going to work just fine. It's going to be relatively quiet and relatively smooth. Again, not quite up to the more modern Katos, but still a pretty darn nice engine. But if you are looking to do a DCC conversion, now is where we're going to go over some of the difficulties you're going to run into to make this thing work. So now that we got the shell off, you're going to find that you will not have a single unified board sitting underneath here. You'll have split boards generally. And what it requires doing is actually, what I did is I took all the components out of this and taped the the two pieces together and took them to a grinder and milled off the back of the frame here. I just ground it down until I had room to fit a Digitrax decoder. As well as, if you look right there, you can see I also ground a groove in the top of the frame to make room for the wires, as well as I had to drill a hole down into the motor compartment. And on one side of the frame, I ended up having to notch some area there just to make room for the wires down into the motor casing. You also have to tear the motor out, remove the contacts that would touch the side of the frame, and solder the wires on, as well as get rid of your rear board and solder some wires to your LED board up front here to make the light work. And that all functions. It's relatively easy to do. It does require some soldering skills and some wire measuring, but this is by no means a professional job, and it took me a couple hours worth of work to get this thing all put together nicely. So it's not as simple as, say, a new engine like one of these, where you simply slide the board out and slide the DCC board into place. The cost, all said and done, ends up being about the same. I want to say these all-wired DCC decoders from Digitrax or TCS, whatever you want to do there, they're anywhere from $30 to $50, so it's not like you're saving any money doing this. So something to be aware of. It actually requires some tools and some machining skills to make these engines function with DCC controllers. Other than the difficulty getting the DCC controller in there, it basically functions and is just as serviceable as all of the more modern Katos. It's easy to get all of the gears. You can oil and grease your trucks from the bottom. Basically, it is really good when it comes to reliability. One thing you should note is these do use slightly different couplers than the normal SD40, SD40-2s. You can install MT couplers. Most of these will come with either Kato couplers or Rapido. However, I would recommend go ahead and not using the pilot that they come with, and go ahead and screw these in. With the quick attach pilot, you'll notice that these can wiggle up and down pretty substantially, and this can cause coupling issues with some types of cars. So I would go ahead and properly measure up a screw, cut it to length, and then put that in place instead of those quick attach coupler connectors for the pilot that most Katos come with. So this really wasn't meant to be a normal review, more of just a informational thing when you're out looking to make sure you're getting the type of Kato you want, because honestly right now with the prices being so inflated, I would not recommend any other DCC ready model out there, whether you're going to run it on DC or DCC. Scale Train's engines are hard to come by right now. Finding a good used one, or any on eBay for that matter, is very difficult. So if you wanted to get into the hobby and just start enjoying trains, a Kato is probably the way to go. And I would hate for you to buy something and be tricked by the seller and end up with something that you can't easily convert to DCC, because that's really, to me, where the fun's at in this hobby. So with all of that said, if you were to come across these, what's a good price point for you to fall into? A more modern Kato on sale, you're looking at about $90 with shipping. So honestly, if you're gonna run DC, I guess that would be an okay price point. I've seen these in closer to the $70 range, and if you can find them for that, they're not a bad deal. As well as if you're okay tool-wise and could handle doing a little bit of soldering work, the DCC controllers are out there and available for these. It's not like they're hard to come by, and they're relatively affordable. So yeah, at that $70 range, this thing would be kind of a fun addition to any layout. if you're more experienced and you kind of want something special, I do think that I've been bringing in a couple other versions of the SD45 that I'm going to get to in the future. I really do think that these are probably the closest ones scale-wise. They don't seem quite right either. It seems to me that these are a little shorter than they're supposed to be, but maybe I'm wrong. I'd have to do some more research that way. But some of the other brand SD45s that I've been bringing in to take a look at have been drastically out of scale in my opinion. So something to note. I think these are closer to in proper scale. So anyway, thanks for stopping by, everybody. Just kind of wanted to do this little bit of an informative thing. So now that all my family's gone and I'm getting rid of some illness from some sick kids, I will be able to hit it hard again next week, and we got a really good review coming next time. So I will see you next week.